We've been trying to introduce people to downtown Bruce. There it is. Okay, so take your time, walk around, enjoy yourself, but this is downtown Bruce Township. But we're here about public service, and we're here about, in particular, firefighters. And so as I tried to think about this occasion, you got to start from somewhere. And my first thought was, okay, well, who first discovered fire? And I guess none of us really know for sure, but I think the well-kept theory is that it was probably some caveman. And I don't think he was rubbing two sticks together, and I don't think he was rubbing a piece of flint on a rock. Most likely what happened is a bolt of lightning came out and set something on fire and probably scared the heck out of him. So what was next? The next thing to occur was he discovered it's very hot. He discovered that it might be helpful on a cold day, and he knew it was very powerful. And he also knew that if it's left to get out of control, it's very dangerous. So while he was figuring all that out, the next thing that occurred were all of his neighbors, all those other cave guys. And my guess is some of them grabbed their children or grabbed their things and ran for cover. Some of them hid behind the couch in their cave. And then there was, of course, a few of them that decided to come and try to help and put the fire out. So perhaps that was our first firefighter. Maybe that was the first real public servant, was the guy that didn't have anything to gain by this but to help his friend or help someone perhaps he didn't even know. Now, get a little history lesson here. We're starting with the caves. What's next? 64 AD. Anybody remember 64 AD? Okay, we'll give you a minute. Just this one guy, thank you. The Roman Empire was the most powerful nation on earth. And they had three great fires in 64 AD. And the bucket brigades tried to put them out. They discovered that water would put it out, but the only way they could deliver it was by carrying it in buckets. And a lot of people did it. But they couldn't save Rome, and Rome died that day. But not for the lack of a lot of public servants. There were firefighters there that day. And I'll bet, though, that we know at least some that hid behind the couch. Some that ran in the other direction. Some ran towards the fire, and some ran away from the fire. Because you all know that Nero was playing his fiddle when Rome burned that day. So, on paper, he was a public servant. But when it came time to getting into the fight, he failed his constituents. Now I'm going to ask you if you remember this public servant, because I think this is one, maybe the most famous of all time, one we all wish we could emulate. George Washington, ring a bell? George Washington was the first public servant. Many of you may or may not know that, he lived in Mount Vernon. He had a beautiful home. I hope you have all visited or will. But he exported grain to Europe. He made shoes. He made beer. He was a very wealthy guy. But for 9 years, he left home to go fight for our freedom, to fight the British so that America could be free. And this was a very wealthy guy that really could have left it to someone else. But George Washington, literally for 9 years, didn't return to Mount Vernon. And only a short time after he was back there, his health began to wear him out a little bit. But did you know that George Washington bought the first fire engine for Alexandria, Virginia? It's true. 1774, he donated a fire engine to Alexandria, Virginia. And I wondered, why would he do that? He was a volunteer fireman. George Washington, our first president, the leader of the colonial army, was a volunteer fireman. That's public service. In 1871, there was a great fire in Chicago, and you've probably heard about the Great Chicago Fire. About a third of the town burned to the ground. And the commonly held story was that Mrs. O'Leary's cow had knocked over a lantern. And I remember hearing that story about Mrs. O'Leary's cow. And Dan, I'm here to absolve Mrs. O'Leary of all guilt, because as it turns out, after doing a little bit more research, come to find out that the reporter that reported that story in the Chicago paper thought it was a cool story, but it wasn't true. He made it up, and poor Mrs. O'Leary, rest in peace, she took a real beating for that, and I'm sure the cow probably did too. But that's not what happened. As that fire burned on, a lot of people jumped into the Chicago River to stay safe, to get cool. A lot of people went to Lake Michigan looking for a place to stay calm or to stay safe. A lot of them hid behind the couch. But a lot of people went to public service, firefighters, volunteers, paid people and unpaid people going down there to try to save Chicago. Now, we know about a third of it burned down, but we also know Chicago survived. So maybe we owe some thanks to those public servants. And that brings us to, let me ask you, do you remember where you were at 8:45 on 9/11 of '01? I bet you all do. It was a Thursday morning. I know I was on southbound Telegraph just south of Maple when some small plane hit the World Trade Center. And my thought was probably not unlike yours, that some errant pilot ran into the biggest building that has ever been created. But we know now that it was a terrorist act. We know now that it was intentional. And we know that some 3,000 people died in that fire. And we know a lot of firefighters died in that fire as well. And that brings us to that story all the way back to that caveman, back to Rome, back to Nero. You've seen all the films of people running from the scene. We're not picking on them. Those are all brave people trying to save their property, trying to save their families, save themselves. Public service isn't for everyone. And as you watch those films, what you've seen is loads of trucks going south on 7th Avenue down to save that building, carrying 50, 60, God knows how much gear up the stairways to save people that were overcome by smoke or broke their legs or were hit by some flying debris. Firemen running into the building. Takes us all the way back to that first fire. Some come running in the direction of the help and some run from the scene. Doesn't make those people bad people. What it means is that firefighters are special. It means that that public service is not for everyone, and it takes a special person to do it. And I hope you'll give these fellows a hand here, because that's what we're looking at here today. We're all very proud of them, and we do appreciate their service. Now, what we have here today is, this is a memorial to all firefighters. We're very fortunate that it's in Bruce, but this is for Washington Township and Armada Township and firefighters that we'll never meet. We're here to recognize all of them today. We're very fortunate to have these fellows, but they're all over the country fighting fires even as we speak. Last December, Ken Melton, who you'll get to know, we got to do something for this guy. Dolores Melton is here. Dolores, hello. Dolores is here. Ken couldn't join us tonight, and that's very unfortunate. But Ken Melton came to me last December. I'd been on the job about 2 weeks, and he said, I want to do something for our fire department. I want to do something for our firefighters. To this day, he hasn't told me why, but I can tell you how intense this gentleman was about doing something special for firemen. And you're seeing the results of that tonight. Out on the curb, we have a 1939 Ansel fire extinguisher. And he went to Grand Rapids to buy that. He actually bought us 2 of them, and the other one that we haven't finished yet is going to be in front of fire station number 2. We've got the brackets up, but it's become more time-consuming than we all had anticipated. So we wanted to make sure you saw this tonight, but that's going to stay there as long as we can manage to keep it. And inside of the building, we will have this plaque that came off the front of it, and we'll have a booklet because we could only find 1 book, and the guy wouldn't part with it. But we're going to have that booklet inside of the lobby there so that as people come by and want to know what it is and how it works, we're going to have all the instructions and a description of where it came from. This was put together by Ken Melton, and he came here at 8 o'clock at night most of the time, or Sunday mornings. You probably never saw him out here digging post holes and built the brackets. And I just can't begin to tell you what an effort he put into that. As I indicated earlier, he wasn't able to come with us tonight, but I got a letter from his daughter that I hope you'll indulge me a minute on. And this is from his daughter. Dear Mr. Teganelli, it's with great regret that my mother, Evelyn Melton, and I will not be able to attend the dedication ceremony at the fire station on August 19th, 2009. As timing would have it, my father, Ken Melton, and I have a previously arranged commitment that cannot be rescheduled. My father has worked tirelessly on this dedication project with the support of his wife, Dolores Melton.